start with Poor Breathing the Elements because I think that is central to Bardon's work. And a lot of people come into the work and they're strong in water and they are weak in fire. And
Mhm.
so, like Poor Breathing Fire, it starts off, in my experience with clients too, is you imagine fire all around you. You imagine fire in the house. You imagine your whole house burning down. And no, it's not going to actually make your house burn down. Don't get too superstitious. But imagine fire all around you, and you're sitting in the big bonfire of a burning house, and that bonfire is in you and the fire is in you, and start breathing that fire in. So it starts off with imagination, becomes manifestation, and then with all the imagining of all the fire everywhere, you're breathing in the fire. And you can in if for some reason that works with most people I work with, but if for some reason that doesn't key you in, you can use physical cues in your
Mhm.
life to key you in. Like you could take a hot bath, and then when you're trying to breathe in fire, imagine you're in that hot bath breathing in the fire. You can go to the sauna and get all the heat in the sauna. And then when you're doing the fire exercise, imagine yourself in the sauna when you're just in your room. And so you can use those physical cues to kind of lock into. So you're imagining it all around you. And so I would say it's just imagining and then, manifesting. And when you imagine, it's not just like imagination, like it may or may not be true. You're creating that vibe. And it happens in the soul body that a lot of people call the astral body. But it's just to get to a point where you have it started. Air can be floating up in the clouds on a landscape where you can see the sky, or it could even imagine a helium balloon that you're breathing in. Water could be imagining you're
Mhm.
submerged into a lake, into an ocean, and you're just breathing in that water. And one of the things Bardon says about water is it's cold. And I don't necessarily think that it does have to be cold, actually. I think it could be warmer water too, and that would work as well. Whatever the water is, just make sure you're imagining that water and breathing in the water. And the earth is just the kind of rocky earth, as if you're maybe under the ground a little bit and it's all earth around you, and that can sometimes kind of stuff you with solidness. And before this session today, I basically had a client who just did all that for a week and noticed tremendous changes from the time I saw him last week until today. There were tremendous changes in him with the poor breathing with the elements. So I would say that comes early. I believe it starts at the end of in step three, and I would say that's one of the pivotal things in initiation into Hermetics. And the more you can do that, the more you're going to contact the Akasha, the more you're going to be able to do the higher abilities. You start talking about mental transference, you're looking at real high abilities that a lot of people struggle to even get that high up that quickly, which is completely understandable. But the poor breathing, the elements is so vital. So I hope what I've said is somewhat helpful.
Wonderful, thank you. That was very, very enlightening, actually. And I think, by immersing yourself in a very sort of like visually sort of engaging experience, what you just wonderfully said there is, I think it adds like an element of well, fun, but also, like I said, engagement. Like you're not just trying to put this thing out and bring it in. You're actually putting yourself in a situation where you're making use of your various faculties to basically, help to build this experience. So thank you. That was a wonderful.
If I do the lucid dreaming?
Yeah, sure.
You go for your life, brother.
The reason I'm interested to talk about it is because, as you point out, Phil, it's not in Bardon's work. He lucid dreaming is where you are conscious during your dream, and there are a number of good and bad outlines and methods that can be found, for example, on YouTube. And as a practice, it has a good and bad side to it, which is perhaps why Bardon doesn't touch on the technique. There are, for example, physiological side effects from developing lucid dreaming. Your dopamine levels drop, which is why it's a bad idea to do in the winter. It can disrupt your circadian rhythms for sleep. And of course, this would all impact negatively on any other spiritual practice you're doing. So lucid dreaming tends to be sidestepped by a lot of people for these very good reasons. I particularly remember one chap about 5 or 6 years ago. I was just looking at him on YouTube, and he'd gone especially to Vietnam, because there was a tower block there that had been built in the 1960s during the conflict between Vietnam and the USA. And you had these small, very basic flats with no windows, none. So he was utilizing the lack of daylight to facilitate the lucid dreaming. And I would say that psychologically, the guy must have been absolutely solid, because that kind of dopamine crash could cause some depression in some people, but he seemed quite mellow. And the guy has made a sterner stuff than me. So this illustrates the value and drawbacks that lucid dreaming has. Speaking for myself, the techniques are fairly basic. You do a dream diary before you go to sleep and when you wake up. As an aside, if you're a beginner to Magick, you need to be able to ritually purify yourself if you do that, because you can be taken advantage of by low-level astral entities. Because you're, as the Muslims rightly point out, you have guards, you have angelic guards, and at the changing of the guard, you are vulnerable, and that is this hypnagogic or this hypnopompic state, just as you wake up or go to sleep. So a psalm or a ritual purification, if you're interested in this kind of work. And for myself, I took it so far and then left it, because it was disrupting much more daytime hermetic work because of these disruptions to the circadian rhythm. And I did it in the summer as well, because dopamine levels tend to be higher than naturally. So what I do with it is, it's kind of something that isn't really used, and I will have a lucid dream because something wants to tell me something really important. And then so I don't do it every night, and it's once or twice a year sometimes I get a lucid dream, but because I sort of open the door a crack, as it were, for this functionality, what happens is it becomes a useful manner for spiritual entities to interface with me if it is important. So something important's happening, I suddenly have a lucid dream. And I realize I'm in the lucid dream, and I don't suddenly wake up, because I've done enough practice so that doesn't occur. One of the problems with lucid dreaming is, initially you have your dream, you awake in your dream, and you wake up from the shock of it. So because I've got past that stage, even though I haven't mastered the method, I haven't done it enough for that, I can wake up in my dream and realize I'm lucid without waking up. And then I can interact with whatever it is that wishes to communicate with me in that place. Because I'm a magician, I have no concerns about negative entities being troublesome. You know, my link with divine providence and with angels is more than sufficient, that I barely ever even see anything like that in my dreams, unless I've been eating too much cheese before I went to bed. You know, so there are cheese dreams. If you have too much cheese, you will have bad dreams. There's no doubt about it, lucid or not. But yeah, so that would be, you know, there are lots of techniques online. Bear in mind that doing this work will disrupt your natural circadian rhythms and depressed dopamine. You will also experience REM rebound. In other words, you haven't been sleeping enough, you haven't had enough REM sleep, so you will naturally start REMing, and you will have micro sleeps in the daytime. So obviously, if you've got an important schedule of work, be it mundane or hermetic, this will have to be shelved. So that's, you know, that's the practicalities of the matter. That being said, you can, as I have, develop the facility and then just use it from time to time as an alternative channel. And that would be my recommendation with it. But there are some people that do immense amounts of work with lucid dreaming. They must know more about it than me, because they don't seem to have suffered any of the rigors that I have mentioned. So as a semi-expert in the matter, I'm afraid I can offer no more than that.
Oh, it was wonderfully articulated. Thank you. And yes, you know, there's a lot of purchase to be found within the dream opportunity, but there is also this thing where you wake up in the morning and you're bouncing out of bed because you've had a lucid dream, or a really vivid dream that's been very beneficial, just really curious, and it sparked an inspiration within you, and that's great. And then there's the one where you wake up and you feel like you've just run a marathon and you've got nothing left and you fail to function throughout the day. And then there's the one where you get a visit from a challenging situation. And
Phil, do you mind if I take this doggy out for a wee? She's begging.
Absolutely.
I'll be
absolutely.
right back.
Yeah, go on, your brother. Yeah, no, all good. Love it. I love it.
Yeah, love dogs.
Oh, the dogs are the best. And you know, and I just want to say that it's like any of the practices. You know, there's things can be taken to an extreme and become unhelpful or unhealthy and have an impact. And if the core is, and for me, I have to say, you know, I'm a Reiki practicer. I practice Qigong, and I'm slowly working my way into Tai Chi. I also like, I like lots of things, but the core practice always comes back to the Hermetic stuff. Like that there helps to keep everything moving along, essentially. It's like a core practice. And with dreaming, what Philip said is very true. You know, you really want to get an understanding of how sleep cycles and sleep patterns work. You need to have at least 3 to 4 90-minute cycles down of rejuvenating delta dreamless sleep. So what you can do is you can go to bed at, say, 9 o'clock, and just don't put the intention that you're going to have a dream, like you're going to be dreaming. You just want to sleep. And then you might get up at 3 or 4. You can set your alarm. I don't. I can just tell myself to wake up. And then I wake up and I'm like, oh, okay, I've had that important deep sleep. And now I'm going to stay up for a bit, do a bit of focused meditation, set an intention. And now what I can do is I can, because the REM sleep patterns start to elevate, I can now take advantage of that. And I'll generally just do another 90-minute sleep cycle. I can go lucid, and I won't wake up feeling drained, because there's an intelligent way of doing this. And, but like Philip says, you know, when some dream, there's so many different types of dreams, but when something is trying to get something through to you, I find that, yeah, once or twice a year, I will have an extremely hyper lucid dream, and I'm fully present. I don't get knocked out of it. It's like, this thing has been apportioned to me. We want to tell you something, and we're going to make it very like, wow, okay, I'm fully like, I'm not always completely lucid, but when I have the faculty of dream recall, which is an excellent activity in itself, because it helps you with visualization and just memory development in that too. Because as you sit with that little fragment of a dream recollection each morning, it starts to expand out, and you're able to reach deeper into the depths of your mind. And so that can be highly beneficial too. But yeah, I mean, it's worth doing the research, because you don't, if you've got a core practice that's critical, you don't want to impede that. Essentially, you want to make sure that that thing can happen. And but there's one guy who's written a great book. Robert Wagner wrote a book, The Gateway to Lucid Dreaming. It's a very Jungian approach to dreaming, and it's great because he talks about why try and have a wicked lucid dream every night. It's like you've got a dream tank. You've only got so much juice in that tank, and if you use it, you're always running on empty, and you're basically starving the tank and damaging the vehicle. And so you're better off aiming for, like, if you want it regularly, go for like one a month or something like that. Don't try, even every week can be quite challenging, but it depends on the practicer. But dreaming can be a full-time thing. I did a big period of it and went, okay, I went right into it. I leaned into it. And then, like most things, I go, okay, I've explored that. About here's good. Yep, that's cool. Okay, tick, sorted, and moving forward. So thank you for that, Philip. Now, Didi, have you got something on any one of these topics you'd like to share or comment on?
Yeah, I'm still thinking about all the dreaming, because it's like, wow, that's a whole new area that I've never been practicing it, but from when I was young, I would have these vivid dreams and also get messages through these dreams. So it's interesting to get some more knowledge about it. So thank you for sharing that. And I'm learning here. So, and some insight. Another thing, I'm not the one who's going to teach you something about one of these things, but the thing that Clint was saying also kind of stuck me when he said, oh, most people, they have this, they're all right with water element, and then the fire element is quite hard for them to go to. And that was exactly the same for me. I mean, I was very comfortable in the water element. I was like, oh, this is like coming home. I'm here. This is my thing. I'm a water element person. I love it. And then to the fire element, I was like, man, I don't even want to go there. That was such a, I felt, yeah.
It felt like that, right? Like,
I didn't want to, I would just stop, just not having the, I just couldn't go there. And then just through practice, and I started to become friends with fire element, but I also saw what Clint was saying, that things started to change in my life because I did this training. So I felt like, oh, also be careful with this training, because in my job, I just felt like, oh, I'm not taking it anymore. Like this manager saying stuff, and I was like, wow, I'm not sure if I can just back off, but I need to stand up for myself more. So I felt that I was that these changes came into my life, getting more in touch with my fire elements. Yeah.
oh yeah.
So, and it's still a practice. It's still something that I need to work on, but it's getting better and better and better. And and I love the sauna idea. I didn't know that one yet. So that's something that I'm gonna try. Yeah.
Yeah. I've got to say personally, like, even just talking about the wondrous sorts of like experiences you can have from pore breathing elements makes me feel a bit watery, to be honest. Because I'm just like, yeah, this is such a beautiful thing. But I've got to say, because I did years of mindfulness practice and I became quite passive after being a very ambitious musician and corporate guy, and then going, working in schools in a very feminine environment and primary schools and that, and then coming into meditation and Reiki. It's very watery and feminine type practices. And now I'm hanging out with a fire guy. Like, this guy's just pure fire. And so I hang out with him, and then I'm all jacked. And I feel that belligerence within me and that rebel start to rise again. And I'm like going, well, you've got to explore it and then tame it. You've got to build it and then tame it, right? And find the utility in it. But you've got to express it. If you it's one thing to breathe it in to familiarize, but when you start packing it it needs to be used or it's going to find a way out. And
Oh, yeah.
so, you know, you that expression pathway, it's better that you have something handy that you can direct it through rather than it finding a crack and then you having an unfortunate interaction with someone that you care about as a direct sort of, you know, result of the practice. And so, yeah, that was, yeah. So now, Armand, have you got something you would like to share on either of these?
Well, we're on the topic of elements, and I think, like, I want to continue what you are saying here, right? So you start building energy because this is where it starts. I mean, before I started building the elements, I started with pore breathing first. Like, you know, you have that skill coming from building the ball exercise, so you learn how to tune into vital energy, feel that, and really go deep with that. Have your 100 times of building the ball. And then you move into this pore breathing thing and you start building energy and building energy. Now you start building the elements. So you sort of split them up in these four divisions. Can we call them that? Yeah. So you cannot do that without working on yourself, right? You cannot do that without the black and white mirror. That's why it's there, right? So because like you say, you start building energy, but you know, if it finds a leakage or finds a weakness in like say the fire element, a lot of people have that, is that where you would normally throw one glass through the room because out of your frustration, the whole cupboard is going to fly, right? I mean, yeah. So this is what I will say to students is you have to take this black and white mirror thing very seriously, right? So you do that at the same time as you start building these elements and really start investigating these elements. What are they for? What are these patterns that you recognize in yourself, and how can you put them there and start understanding yourself? So yeah, I just wanted to continue on what you were saying. That's such an important thing that you understand the theory, but also understand your own personal. You have to understand your astral body, right? You have to understand your soul. You have to understand your past. You have to become your own psychologist here. At the same time, I mean, this goes much deeper than just introspection. You have to be really intelligent with yourself if you want to improve on yourself. So yeah, so that's a very important one. Another practical one is that I love what Clint said about, you know, it's like, so what you imagine with everything, like the fire element, that you can add colors like the color red or yellow, orangey, fire colors, but you can also add sounds. And that's what I learned from Mark Rasmus, to add sound. And that really, really helps. I never do the sounds too loud. I want to have the sound just tweaked in because I want to really be on the feeling. So let's say fire, I concentrate on the fire region. So also going a little bit before that, as you teach someone pore breathing, I want them to learn whole body pore breathing. I also teach them to pore breathe with their pinky or their left eye, or, you know, you want to be like this or really detailed. So when you start going into these elements, you really can go into an area, focus on this area. So there's an imagining stage of like the imagining fire, or the room is burning. That's more of a feeling thing. And then you start adding the S sound, very softly going. It's more like a burning stove, some things like hissing. And it, you know, if you combine it with everything and do that pretty softly, it's gonna boost it like crazy. For the element, it will be an ah sound, like soft, like a whisper. And also get yourself on a chair or standing and bring the energy up in your joints, and get this floating sensation while you're doing it. So you bring your center of gravity up to the chest area, the air element area, and add this sound as well. But you can also picture a blue sky, big sky, country, you know, it's like and this sound with this is gonna build that to a next level also. For the water element, that would be an M sound, the M from Mark, but then you breathe that out towards the water region, so the abdomen region, and you start vibrating from the inside out your belly. So it's more like a So I keep it inside and I make my belly vibrate a little bit, and of course imagining water. And for the earth element, there's sort of the silent scream sound. It's more like a So focusing on lower part from the hips down, legs, but you will find as you make that sound, you just gently start squeezing your whole skeleton, so the bones will feel a little bit compressed. So these sounds have really helped me a lot. So there's the S sound for fire, there's the sound for the air element, there's the M sound, vibrating sound, keeping it inside, so breathing out inside. Does that make sense? Vibrating, and then there's the silent sound for the earth element, and that's just fantastic, you know. But then I also teach people pretty quickly the first transformation, so that I do that. So I will do maybe 10 breaths or so for fire element, building the element, strengthening it. But then immediately afterwards, I go into the first transformation and start breathing stillness into that element, because this is how you balance the element inside itself, which is very important, right? So a lot of people think, so, okay, so you balance fire and water, and then you get, well, there's truth in that, obviously, because if there's not enough fire in you and there's a lot of water, of course, but balancing the element inside the element itself, do that in the first transformation. So go into astral breathing this element. So no sound anymore, pure stillness. It's just focusing on this area that you've just built. It will linger there for sure. It's there, and just breathe stillness into it. And then that's what I do. And this is how I learned it. Afterwards, you have done all the 4 elements. You tune into the solar plexus area and go to the still point of your being. So this is in between the yang elements and then the yin elements. So this is the sort of the S in the yin yang, you could say. You go in there, go into stillness, and just I do make myself small and contract in my own universe to the stillness point of my being, and I just sit there for a while, go into the place of equanimity, and this is how I finish my pore breathing element. So I don't only pore breathe them, I also astral breathe them in the same session. So that's what I wanted to add also for people practicing this, and that's just a great way of doing this. Sessions would be maybe, this is pretty long. It could be a 30-minute session, something like this, but well worth it. And students love it because you take them on a trip doing this. They really have a chance to go deep with them.
Yeah.
It's a ride, you know. It's a ride. Yeah.
So you covered some great ground there, and you know, like encountering the ability to add a very, very physical layer to be able to affect an internal state. And so you basically create this state and you encounter this experience you can bring in or you can change within yourself. And then you learn to adapt and acclimatize to this tension that you build, and you know, you get good. It's like, you know, you don't start off lifting 50 kilos, you're going to start off with these little things, right? And so, because even though some people like taking the hero dose and going, man, I'm going to do half an hour of just breathing fire element, and it's like, bro, that ain't going to work out well. You need to, you know, like, you know. So and it's funny because people underestimate the potency of these practices, and if you've got one that's out of balance or something like that, you know, it's going to make itself known. And Bardon gives a very good sort of like one size fits all of like taking a very careful segmented approach to this, because it's ultimately like, you know, the worst thing you want is that you write a book and suddenly everyone's like crapping out. They're having experiences, but they're basically cooking themselves. And so, yeah, I think, and with the Qigong stuff that Mr. Rasmus brings along, where you actually like, you start filling yourself with this flavorable or programmable medium of vital energy and being able to change it in states, and then mentally transferring into that encountered state that you've put in within yourself, and then learn to just relax into that state to bring the stillness. You tame the element, and then you're like, oh, okay, now I really am taking ownership of it, and I am able to basically say I have a level of mastery over it. Not externally, you start internally, don't you? And then, you know, you go from the in out. So wonderful. Thank you.